I had some resistance to sitting down and doing this reading today, not beforehand, because beforehand I was getting told to just kind of like sit back and observe the energy and take notes and kind of try to put things together on my own. And they were giving me a lot over the last week or so. But specifically right now, sitting down and trying to get to the pushing of the record button there was like some resistance going on there. So I do think that we need to talk about that in relation to this message. Maybe there's something that needs to be seen. I just unconsciously like pulled something off my eye. It felt like there was like a hair or something there. So a small annoyance or something that we're not seeing. They were giving me messages about hidden in plain sight, which we will get to. I have 2 pages of notes here, and that's summarized. I boiled that down from about 6 pages of notes or more, 10 pages. So that's a lot. But before we dive into the reading, both the channeled messages and we pull some cards from a new deck, I do want to say a big, big thank you to Mache for sending us the Archetypes deck by the Wild Unknown. Spirit showed me that we were going to be working with. They called me to this deck last week and I was feeling the call to it. I added it to my Amazon wish list and Mache reached out and wanted to provide this for us. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I haven't even opened it yet. So let's just do that on camera together. We'll do a little bit of an unboxing. It's got this like beautiful diamond on the front, and I just did a diamond codes reading on my other channel. It's Tarot and Beyond. It was a pick a card, and it was to do with these diamond frequencies that I was being told are coming in right now. But anyway, let's keep going. Okay, we got the guidebook. I'm definitely going to want to look into that. And the first thing again is the diamond. The diamond theme is really, really strong here. Okay, it comes in like, so it's like in this box that says accept all, reject none. That's a synchronicity from this morning. Me and my friend were talking about that. And then it has this other little separate box, which I think is really cool. Okay. Oh yeah, the whole back is diamond. I forgot about that. All right, so let's get these out. Okay, so how do you want me to do this, Spirit? In what order do you want me to do this in? Do you want me to pull some cards? Do you want me to talk about the channeled messages? Because I know we're going to need to do some research today. It's like one of those days, you know? We're going to have to deep dive into this, so get comfy. This is probably going to be a long reading. And if it's super long, I might even make it a 2-parter. I'm also going to do an additional pick a card reading looking into some of these energies, eclipse season, all that good stuff on my on the pick a card channel. It's Tarot and Beyond. But I do feel this card. Let me see. The Storm. Okay, so let's just go ahead and dive in then. We'll see how these energies are going to conjunct, which is an astrological term, meaning these 2 energies harmonize. In alchemical terms, conjunction is when you bring opposing dualistic forms into unity or into union, when you merge them together. So the Storm and the Poet. It's so funny. I should have written this down. I did take it down in my synchronicities notes in my phone, but as I was translating from the phone to the book, I didn't write down the Poet. But we are going to talk about how this is related to some of the messages that they were bringing through. So I think let's start with those. No, they want one more right off the top. They said, okay. The Mentor. Ooh, okay. All right. The Mentor. Beautiful cards these are. I love it so much. Okay. The Mentor, the Poet, and the Storm. Okay. So the first messages that Spirit brought through, they actually said, you can walk through hell unscathed. And then I also heard to save the souls that need to be saved. And they were previously bringing through synchronicities about SOS messages, signals, or calls. I also heard save yourself. So this isn't about saving other people. It's more about saving yourself or other parts of yourself. We've been talking about this a lot on the channel, these different parts of the self coming back together. We're going to do, they just told me we're going to do a deep dive on this in a past life reading. And I have some client readings that I've been working on that are connected to past life stuff as well. So this could be emerging or re-emerging fractals of the self that are being brought back up into awareness from the underworld, from hell, from these lower vibrational states that may have gotten there because of the storm, but that you're working through in a very poetic way. I'm hearing poetic justice. Okay. And finding a way to understand it all, or having this mentor being or guide by your side as you go through it. It's like different versions of you is kind of what it feels like. I'm hearing healing, saving yourself by healing yourself. Okay. The next message, actually, I'm going to jump around a bit because we need to come back to that. They were also showing me roller coasters, going up, going down, elevators and escalators, also about going up and going down. And I'm hearing the word riddles. Is the poet the Riddler? Is the poet the Riddler? And they're showing me hands, and they've been showing me hands. I didn't write that down. But again, now that I'm in the reading energy, all these synchronicities they've been showing me are coming up into my mind again. They were showing me hands and arms, like reaching for something, being beckoned, being welcomed, receiving. There's so many things that our hands can do. Something about the hands. Okay, so they were showing me shape-shifting gods and fairies as well, shapeshifters. And they were showing me references to the series Animorphs, which was like huge when I was in elementary school. It was like the biggest thing, the Scholastic Book Fair. If you guys are from that generation, you know what I'm talking about. The Animorphs were like the thing. And I remember reading the series, but I don't think I read it in full. I read like a few books or something, and I just remember it being a little too intense for me, so I backed off of it. And then in high school, I read the series Everworld, who apparently it's written by the same author. Catherine Applegate wrote both Animorphs and Everworld. And in Animorphs, there's the whole series is about like an intergalactic war, and these group of teenagers get this blessing curse of being able to transform into animals. And as they shapeshift, they're able to repair themselves. So they get like torn up, they get really brutally savaged, but they can always kind of heal themselves by shape-shifting. So that was kind of the thing that was really sticking out to me the most, as well as the intergalactic war. And then in Everworld, all of these gods and fairies and like different races of divine beings existed, and they would alternate. When they would sleep in one world, they would wake up in the other, and vice versa. So I started looking up stuff to do with anthropomorphism and anthropotheism and theomorphism. And I think that we're going to dive into that a little bit more and take a look at these themes, because it does feel like it's related to this message. But they were also showing me stuff to do with canons, lore, zeitgeist, and world building, specifically regarding the hero's journey, like a choose your own adventure style experience or creation of reality. The poet of your own reality. I also just heard there's poetry in the storm, and they're showing me that underworld again. They said be your own hero, and I put 2 stars next to that because that's connected to the previous message of save yourself, saving your own soul. Also, in connection to the underworld energy, they were showing me references to the Morrigan and hell. Hell is from Norse mythology, and the Morrigan is, I believe, Celtic in origin. It's like merging these different cultural collective archetypes, since we're literally working with the archetype stack. Collective archetypes. Anthropomorphized into gods or deities. Parts of the self, Spirit is saying. Parts of the self. Yes, okay. And then they were showing me hidden, things being hidden like secrets that were hidden, things that were hidden in plain sight, hidden treasure, buried treasure. They were showing me like something that was lost, but could be found if you looked hard enough for it. They said, look where you lost it. Look where you lost it. So maybe this is talking about lost parts of the self in the psyche that you need to look for in specific dimensions or domains, or maybe even altering the state of consciousness to access them through dreams or something like that. They did say something secret, hidden in plain sight, and they were showing me so many synchronicities to hidden in plain sight. The one that really stuck out to me was hiding something in plain sight by making it the same color. So it's like writing in white font on a white piece of paper. It's hidden in plain sight, or white font on a white background on the screen. Like you can't see it. So you have to almost like find a way to scan it or change the degree of color gradation to be able to access that secret information. So it's not even like fine print. It's like something that's completely hidden, but it's right there. This could even be talking about dimensions, because that's how I experience or perceive dimensions too, like different states of consciousness. They're all available to us. They're right there, but we don't necessarily see it from our limited bandwidth if we're in one state of consciousness, especially for an extended period of time. So I do feel like we kind of have to rise and fall through these different states of consciousness. Hi, Kitty. Yeah, confirmation. Kitty is for confirmation. And working with a mentor could be helpful for this. Now, if this is a part of yourself, this is being able to access different states of consciousness and have this part of you that is a guide you through that process. If this is someone else, or maybe even through stories, through the lore, different worlds that you're exploring that authors have written or channeled about, the zeitgeist of human consciousness. Canonical, something's canonical, like it's known in the collective in some way. Working with that as a mentor to understand your personal hero's journey and the collective hero's journey that we're going through. If you're interested, I recommend checking out Joseph Campbell and his book on the hero's journey. It's definitely connected to this message. There's a second page of notes, but they want me to stop and just dig a bit deeper into these ones, and then we'll find out what those are talking about or how this is all related. Okay, so the first thing I want to look up is anthropomorphize. So it's the attribution of human traits, emotions, or intentions to non-human entities for the representation of a thing or abstraction as a person, also connected to personification. Personification is the related attribution of human form and characteristics to abstract concepts such as nations, emotions, and natural forces, such as seasons and weather. Both have ancient roots as storytelling and artistic devices. Okay, so we're definitely talking about storytelling here, the story that we are telling, the stories that we have told, and how these shape our awareness. They're saying something about the passage of time, maybe even being able to look back in time and understand the cultural mindset at different points in time. Anyway, both have ancient roots as storytelling and artistic devices, and most cultures have traditional fables with anthropomorphized animals as characters. People have also routinely attributed human emotions and behavioral traits to wild as well as domesticated animals. Oh my God, they were showing me that too. And I watched this video about this man who in Soviet Russia created this experiment under the guise of researching something completely different than what he was actually researching, hidden in plain sight, so that he could get funding to genetically select domesticated traits in wild foxes until within 6 or 10 generations, those foxes they had completely changed, like their physical structure. They had shortened snouts, they had tufts of white fur, they wagged their tails like dogs, they were more intelligent, their survival, flight or flight, fear responses were turned way down, and it was shown that in the amygdala, it was not as wired for those fight or flight responses, survival mechanisms. The front part of the brain started to grow stronger, emotional recognition, social bonding, hierarchical structures, and connections with humans were prioritized at an evolutionary level. So this was really cool. And we're literally using the wild unknown deck. So I feel like there's a connection there between this wild unknown of the underworld, the subconscious, the dark layers of the self, what's hidden in plain sight, and these behavioral traits, the stories that we tell, the way that we see the world, or that we warp the world, so that we shape the world in these different ways through our perception, whether it's accurate or not. We're telling a story either way. And it's how we respond to these emotions, to these natural forces, to our environment, and the internal landscape as well. Okay, so etymology. Anthropomorphism, derived from the Greek anthropos, human, and morphe, form. Yeah, because that reference to animorphs was humans and animals. Again, it is wild and domesticated. And I was thinking about this when they were showing me the stuff to do with the foxes and domestication. And I've thought this before. They said it in the video I watched. It was like humans basically domesticated themselves. And I think that's a really cool thing. When we interact with animals and we domesticate them, they do become more intelligent. And at a soul level, when we're domesticating animals or even ourselves, we are elevating the level of consciousness of the soul. We're literally evolving, not just physically, biologically, but at the soul level, evolving to be able to hold new states of consciousness. And sometimes being able to understand that process or to work with these new states of being is too much internally or personally. And so we tend to anthropomorphize and project that outward onto these deities, these beings, these archetypes themselves. So I'm seeing something here to do about like the architecture of the mind and change, different levels of intelligence, empathy, how we can grow, adapt, and change through the stories that we tell, the way that we see the world, the way that we see ourselves, and the way that we're able to connect through these collective stories. It's like we're able to understand each other better, we're able to understand ourselves better, and when we connect in that way, we are breeding more of the collective unconscious awareness, and through that, we're further domesticating ourselves in a good way, because we're taking the wild parts of the self and bringing them home. Oh my God, literally. We're taking the wild parts of the self and domesticating them, welcoming them in, letting them know you don't have to fight to survive. It's not kill or be killed. It's not hunt or be hunted. It's safe. It's safe to just be. You've got protection. You've got love. You've got community. Interesting. In religion and mythology, anthropomorphism is the perception of a divine being or beings in human form, or the recognition of human qualities in those beings. So it goes both ways, because either way, we're projecting parts of the self outward or creating a recognition of those divine parts of ourselves inwardly. Ancient mythologies frequently represented the divine as deities with human forms and qualities. They resemble human beings not only in appearance and personality, they exhibited many human behaviors that were used to explain natural phenomena, creation, and historical events. The deities fell in love, married, had children, fought battles, wielded weapons, rode horses and chariots, feasted on foods, and sometimes even required sacrifices of food and beverage to be made by human beings. Some anthropomorphic deities represented specific human concepts such as love, war, fertility, beauty, or the seasons. Anthropomorphic deities exhibited human qualities such as beauty, wisdom, and power, and sometimes human weaknesses such as greed, hatred, jealousy, and uncontrollable anger. I was seeing references to regret, jealousy, greed, hatred. Yeah, all of those human emotions were coming up. Greek deities such as Zeus and Apollo often were depicted in human form, exhibiting both commendable and despicable human traits. Anthropomorphism in this case is more specifically anthropotheism. From the perspective of adherents to religions in which humans were created in the form of the divine, the phenomenon may be considered theomorphism, or the giving of divine qualities to humans. So again, it works kind of in both directions. Euhemerism is an approach to the interpretation of mythology in which mythological accounts are presumed to have originated from real historical events or personages. Euhemerism, am I saying that right? Euhemerism was not the first attempt to rationalize mythology in historical terms. However, the enduring influence of Euhemerism upon later thinkers such as the classical poet Ennius identified him as the traditional founder of this school of thought. Okay, so we're talking about a poet again here. Classical thinkers, poets, history, mythology mirroring history. I feel like there was something that was lost to history that we're meant to rediscover by looking at mythology, poetry, stories, and the stories that we're collectively telling about our current state of mind as a collective. Does this make sense? Like, I'm trying to put these pieces together, and kind of what I'm starting to see take form, it literally shapeshifting, like taking form, taking a new form, is maybe the collective story or the history is changing, or we need to reflect back on these old myths and these old archetypes and look at and understand aspects of ourself a little more deeply, to have a wider view of them and incorporate that into what we're going through right now. Because collectively, I've been feeling some heavy energies come up, and it does feel connected to eclipse season. I felt like this may have been an eclipse reading, but I think I want to do that as like part 2, and we'll focus way more on like what's actually going on in eclipse season right now, because this is kind of like the preface for that. This is like work that we need to understand before we dive into that message. So this is going to be a standalone reading, and then we'll do the eclipse one. But it feels like it's very much connected to that eclipse energy. So I do want to look up the Morrigan because they've been showing me a lot of stuff to do with the Morrigan and crows and ravens. The Morrigan translates to Great Queen or Phantom Queen. Phantom, something hidden. Again, the Morrigan is mainly associated with war and fate. Oh my God, Animorphs was like a whole story about war. Especially with foretelling doom, death, or victory in battle. In this role, she often appears as a crow. She incites warriors to battle and can help bring about victory over their enemies. The Morrigan encourages warriors to do brave deeds, strikes fear into their enemies' hearts, and is portrayed washing the bloodstained clothes of those fated to die. She is most frequently seen as a goddess of battle and war, and has also been seen as a manifestation of the earth and sovereignty goddesses, chiefly representing the goddess's role as a guardian of the territory and its people. Okay, there's a couple of things that came to my mind as I was reading that. I was thinking about Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey and how the mentor will usually come in to help them to overcome some kind of a challenge, whether it's internal or external. And this battle could be internal or it could be external. I think it's both, as within, so without. But I was also seeing reference here to her being a goddess of battle and war, and how the eclipse is connected to that Aries energy. And I was thinking about how Aries is the god of war in Greek and Roman mythology. So yeah, it feels like there's maybe it's martial energy, like Mars, Martian, something collective being foretold here. And I'm really hoping that it's not like literal war, but there's something that we have been at war with for some time within ourselves collectively. And it is the underworld that we have to go into to kind of quell that butting of the heads within the self. And maybe we have to go into that underworld and go through that process of death and transformation to be able to reemerge as the hero. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting here. There's so much of this underworld theme, stuff that was hidden in the subconscious that needs to come out, and it may present in like a storm-like way where it kind of just hits and we have to deal with it, run for cover, or face it. The lightning bolts reminding me right now of Zeus as well. So something about Zeus, and the owl reminds me of Athena. I was seeing references to Aphrodite yesterday as well. So exploring these themes and understanding, or if you're being shown or led to specific mythological sources or stories or lore, or even modern ones, and maybe the juxtaposition between those two is really important. We have to look at these modern storytelling devices that we're using, the canons there, how we're exploring themes, and how those may have been mirrored or reflected through, or could deepen our understanding of them if we go back in time and look at these older ones as well. Maybe even how those have shapeshifted and evolved over time, like how these old gods are being portrayed in new ways, and how we have grown as a collective, and how we can kind of see that superimposed onto these deities with our human trait, personify those parts of the self that have evolved or grown in these ways. I'm thinking of like Percy Jackson, modern retellings of these ancient myths. I do want to look up Hel, the goddess, not the place. But since we're talking about underworld, it's kind of like the same thing. So Hel is Old Norse. She's a female being who is said to preside over an underworld realm of the same name, where she receives a portion of the dead. Hel is attested in the Poetic Edda, again, poetry, compiled in the 13th century from earlier traditional sources. Again, like traditional sources, the evolution, I'm seeing those foxes going through generations or stages of development, evolving these different characteristics. Hel is referred to as daughter of Loki. The Old Norse name Hel is identical to the name of the location over which she rules. It stems from the Proto-Germanic feminine noun haljo, concealed place, the underworld. Concealed place, hidden in plain sight, the underworld. A derivative of Helen, to cover, conceal, or hide, derived ultimately from the Proto-Indo-European verbal root kel, to conceal, cover, or protect. So maybe it's even talking about the evolution of language itself, because language is a story that we tell. It's not a set sort of rule. That's why English is just a mishmash of everything, and there's constantly contradictions to the rules because it has evolved naturally, and that's not perfect, but it tells the story of where we've been and potentially where we're going. We are the poets of our own lives, and we're telling that story every single day. So there's some kind of a process right now that's going on where we're collectively shape-shifting. And as we go through this transition, it is a bit of a death phase where we're looking into this undercurrent, the underworld within ourselves is being revealed to us in some way. And having this archetypal lens may be helpful at this time to be able to understand this story, because the story that we're going through is fundamentally a playing out of these different characters and these parts of the self. I'm hearing being exposed. So something, looking where you lost something that was hidden, something that was lost in the dark, is being exposed. As that storm rages, the underworld becomes enlightened, is actually what I'm hearing. Okay, now on to the second half of the message, not the second part, which we'll do later, but the second half of these written notes. They were showing me pigeons. Stool pigeons, carrier pigeons, and messenger gods. So that could be connected to Hermes, Mercury. There's something there about messengers, messages in bottles, carrier pigeons. Okay. Oh, domestication goes with that as well, because humans domesticated pigeons to be used to deliver messages until we didn't need them to do that anymore, until we had the technology that replaced them. And that's why pigeons are so prevalent in cities. We domesticated them, but they stayed domesticated in a sense. That's why they're not really scared of humans. So maybe there's something here about this latent nature of fear that we need to understand a little bit more deeply, and that's being brought to the surface through some kind of a stormy encounter with this emotion or with this experience on the outside. And we're having to look at where that fear resides, or what mechanisms that we've evolved to become warlike in that way, versus the opposing energy, which I think we're moving more into intentionally, which is peace, harmony, community, togetherness, domestication, like being able to work in harmony with different parts of the self, different species, different states of consciousness, that kind of thing. And then they were showing me treasure maps. And this is where it gets interesting, because we're talking about hidden things, right? Looking where you lost it. Well, there's some kind of hidden treasure, because they were showing me treasure maps and references to the forest. So they said, into the forest, lost in the woods, go to the woods, hidden treasure, treasure chests. And they were also showing me references to hidden gems. Okay, so that's a lot. But when I think of the forest as a storytelling device or as an archetype itself, it's often used to display this underworld type energy. It's where we feared to tread. It's also where the wild things live. Isn't that a book, Where the Wild Things Are? Anyway, there's something about like this wildness that we have to like willingly put on our sword, our shield, our armor, walk with our mentor, but maybe we have to do this on our own, to go into these dark parts of the self and to find this hidden treasure. It's like a quest. We have to go on this quest to find the ultimate truth. And it is a hidden gem within the self. It's wisdom within the self, but we can start to see it take form or take shape or evolve through the stories that we're collectively telling, and how these really hit different at the psychological level. So maybe these stories are the treasure map. Maybe the stories, the characters, the archetypes, the mythology, the history, it's all there in plain sight, but we have to know how to connect the dots, how to perceive it, and how this is helping us to understand ourselves a little more deeply. Then they were showing me stuff to do with phases, and they were saying in a cycle, 360 degrees. So that's kind of like the perimeter of the circle. And it was reminding me of 365 days and how the extra 5 days is added on there because our Earth's orbit is not perfectly perpendicular. It's tilted on its axis. So we get that extra 5 days. At least I think that's how it works. So there's something about the cycle and the phase that we're in, and in looping around. The evolution or revolution could be part of this as well. I was getting messages in a previous reading about something being pushed out from the inside, and it kind of reminds me of, what is it, centrifugal force? I know centripetal and centrifugal are different. One pushes in, one pushes out. Let's just look it up while we're here. A centripetal force is a force that makes a body follow a curved path. The direction of the centripetal force is always orthogonal to the motion of the body and towards the fixed point. I would need someone to explain that to me in layman's terms, because you just lost me, Wikipedia. I don't know what you're talking about. Centrifugal force, also called an inertial or pseudo force that appears to act on all objects when viewed in a rotating frame of reference. It appears to be directed radially away from the axis of rotation or the frame. So that's pushing out. Centrifugus means fleeing from the center in a literal translation. Fleeing from the center. Something's being pushed out from the center. Let me look up centripetal. Isaac Newton described centripetal force as a force by which bodies are drawn or impelled or in any way tend towards a point as to a center. Okay, so centripetal goes in, centrifugal goes out. I'm no scientist, okay? I'm a reader, but just for the purpose of this reading, we're going to look at it that way. So something's being pushed out from the surface to the surface. I didn't even mean to say that. From the center, I meant to say. But something's coming to the surface from the center. Maybe it was like buried down, and then as it's rotating, it's creating this force that's pushing it outward. Now, the reason this is important is because when it's compelled to come outward like that by this force, it makes us have to look at it. We have to deal with it. And this is the phase that we're in. Now, the next thing they showed me, they said token of respect. And I also heard the word admiration. And then I heard field research, and they showed me, which I was seeing references to before as well. They showed me a goalie defending a net on a field, and they were emphasizing in my mind the shape of the soccer ball, the hexagons on the soccer ball, and the pattern of black and white. So let me actually look up, are they hexagons? Yeah, I think they are. Hold on. Why is a soccer ball made with hexagons and pentagons? Chopping off corners or truncation converts any platonic solid into a generalized soccer ball. What? In particular, the standard soccer ball is a truncated icosahedron. After truncation, the 20 triangular faces of the icosahedron become hexagons. The 12 vertices are shown here turn into pentagons. There's something way deeper to that my human mind right now does not have the prerequisites to be able to understand. This is like going into geometry and math again, which if you have watched any of my other videos here on this channel, Spirit's having me do a lot of research behind the scenes into like quantum physics, quantum mechanics, math, science, all sorts of geometry. And that's not necessarily my area of expertise, but I'm trying my best to understand what they're showing me or trying to teach me here, and so that I can share it with you. But they were saying token of respect, admiration, and field research. And then they showed me that goalie blocking the ball, getting hit by the ball, but stopping it nonetheless. So now I want to look at these cards that we have here, the Storm, the Poet, and the Mentor. I opened it right to the page that says Mother on it, and I was going to skip ahead and just edit that out. But I did notice that when I picked up the deck, the dead end is at the bottom. Literally the dead end, the underworld, the end. The ending of a story, coming full circle. The mother, and it says in the first line, it says, we begin our archetypal story with the mother's love. When I picked up the deck the first time, the mother was right on the bottom. That's why that stuck out to me. But let's look at the Storm. I wish they weren't in Roman numerals. I don't know how to find them. But anyway, I skipped to the Poet. Apparently that's the first thing there. So let's go with that. It's the one right in the center of the three cards that we have here in front. So the artist, the witness, the truth teller. The poet's work is to feel immensely and not be afraid. They must seek out truth in the darkest corners of the world and carry it back for all to see. This unique capacity resides within us all, regardless of our relationship to creativity. When the poet energy is present, there is a call for deep honesty and reflection, for seeing the big picture within the little one. The poet rides effortlessly between the personal and universal. It's possible that others may not seem to listen or care about the poet's work, but do not be discouraged. The words of the poet ring true for centuries to come, soothing the wounds of despair and violence that captivate our world. The poet's work is never finished. Find your voice and trust that the wind will carry it. When light, it says the poet is clairvoyant, wise, and timeless. When dark, it can show up as harmful words, sharp tongue, or thwarted creativity. To go deeper, spend 1 hour reading poetry and then one more. They're just recommending 2 hours of poetry. But I would even recommend, reading like any of the stories that are calling out to you at this time, because there's something about this going between the worlds, diving into the underworld, looking at these subconscious archetypes that is going to be helpful in reading stories themselves. It says the poet is related to the shaman and the bridge. These archetypes hover in the meeting place between the everyday and the sacred. It's likely there is a poem or poet that was meaningful to you at a young age. Revisit and reread it now. Be open to its message. I was talking about how I read Everworld as a teenager and how Animorphs came out when I was in elementary school. Like, what? Yeah, at a young age, something about this development of the psyche and the stories that shaped us and how we are shaping the story of ourselves now, how we are the poet, diving into these worlds, coming back with the treasure, finding our way in the dark woods, not getting lost, or getting lost, but still finding our way. They want me to read The Mentor, then The Storm. So let's look up The Mentor. It's actually like before. Yeah, it's right one before. That's why, because it was easier to go back to The Mentor than to go forward to The Storm. Interesting. So, The Mentor, the teacher, the sage, the guru. It is said that cosmic knowledge pours down on the world like a great illuminated waterfall. This can be an elven. It says overwhelming. Okay, but fairies and elves. Okay. This can be an overwhelming force. I'm seeing the battle of the three world, or the battle of the three armies. Lord of the Rings. Anyway, this can be an overwhelming force. Yeah, no kidding. The true teacher, though, it is said to be able to hold this flow of wisdom at bay while the student sips from a focused stream. The mentor archetype has a gift for reading the room, for sensing the exact ingredient that will stimulate growth within the student, whether pleasant or painful. The mentor may appear aloof or available, harsh or tender, humorous or rigid. Their gift is to know what serves the soul. Ultimately, the mentor is in service of the greater good, the greater cosmic good. That's actually another synchronicity. Spirit was showing me stuff to do with the greater good, and aids in the elevation of consciousness. Anytime the mentor forgets this humble link and mistakes themselves for the source of enlightenment, the archetype falls into shadow. So the light aspect is focused, clear, bright, and remains a student. When dark, it becomes self-serving, envious of youth, righteous, or rigid. To go deeper, the riddles of Zen masters and their students are recommended to explore. Although it's typically true that parents are our initial teachers, that's why the mother card came out, the child will eventually seek a mentor figure outside of the home to assist their growth. Keep in mind how easy it is to project power onto another. The expressions feat of clay and cult of personality exist for a reason. I've never heard of either of those sayings, but it's kind of reminding me of how when we're children, we look at the parents as these godlike beings, and then we're kind of like slammed into the underworld or into the reality, whichever way you want to see it, as the fact that they're flawed. And it's like that superimposition of these divine traits onto these human beings can cause almost like this fall from grace, but it's like a rehabilitation process within the self to understand that they're not perfect. Neither are you. Neither are we. Nobody is. We're all humans having this human experience. And yet at the same time, once we get to a higher level of consciousness, we begin to understand that we are those God beings at the same time that we are human. I won't go into that too much. Let's look for the storm. I'm looking at the Roman numerals and going, I don't know what order to find them in, but it didn't even matter the order, because they made me start from the middle, the poet, then go forward to the mentor, which was actually back in the book, and then back to the storm, which is forward in the book. So there's like that central force pushing outward, but in like this weird way. Let me see. XLV11. There it is. The storm. I just love how beautiful these cards are. The chaos, the whirlwind, the disorder, possessing an energy much like the tarot's Tower card. Yeah, I was thinking that. The storm undoes all that is. Everything that was solid, known, and relied upon is stripped away by the winds of fate. The ground becomes the sky becomes the center, and the center disappears. What was I just saying about starting from the center and then going back, but going forward, going back, going forward, but going back? Everything's flipped on its head. The storm is a great equalizer. No matter how far we've come on the path, no matter our age, wealth, or wisdom, we can't hide from its savage winds. Their disturbing howls stir anxiety and make it impossible to see and think straight. I think this is the phase we're in right now, because I've been noticing this tumultuous, chaotic energy. The rise and fall has been intense. The shadow stuff coming up from the collective mind has been intense. So this is where we're at. Let's just be aware of that and know that we can ride out the storm. Riders on the Storm. I think that came up in a previous reading. I can't remember what channel or what reading it was, but I remember singing that song. You must wait it out. If you try to fight the storm, you will lose. A better option is to seek temporary shelter and a reliable friend. When all else fails, go within. There, for a moment, you settle into the eye of the storm, or the eye of the storm. But I pointed to the heart, so I feel like this is at the center of it all. When light, it's meaningful obliteration and annihilation. When dark, meaningless disorder and dysfunction. I was seeing a lot of references to chaos. Go deeper. The tornado scene in The Wizard of Oz, Rilke's The Man Watching are references to analyze this a little deeper. The storm lays bare the truth that there are forces larger than you. This understanding is a relief, but also a predicament of power that requires your surrender. They just said the anthropomorphism of the storm, and they're showing me like chaotic storm gods, or gods of chaos and destruction. They're also showing me trickster gods like Loki. They were showing me references to leprechauns. I've been seeing a lot of stuff to do with Irish. So Irish and Celtic. We did see the Morrigan come up as well. So the storm's intention is to rebalance your equilibrium. It is a result of precarious conditions, not the cause of them. Interesting. They want me to read the one that was on the bottom, the dead end. Okay, let me look at that. There it is. Yeah, the dark end. When I'm channeling, it comes out of my mouth. So the dead end, the dark end, the underworld, into that darkness, the shadow self. Okay, so the dead end says the closed door, the final chapter, the impasse. Let me hold it up. Hold on. Underneath that is the village. I feel like that's significant. Don't even know what that card's about, but it feels significant. Contrary to what its name implies, the dead end is very much alive. It is a force that stops us from moving forward as planned. It is thick, dense, uncompromising, a wall beyond all walls. I'm hearing labyrinth in the mind. With every bramble, thorn, and stone, it simply states, no more, child. You have reached the last page of this chapter. It is natural to resist. It's very resistance and struggle, even harder to make our way, to prove our point, to hold on to what was. In this way, we fight with life itself. From a mythic perspective, the end you face is very much a beginning. There are doors opening all around you, just not the one you planned on walking through. If you are honest and courageous enough to accept, adjust, and adapt, the dead end becomes known as life's beginning. And they're showing me the Mother card again, which is the beginning of this archetype deck. So something's being reborn, but it's coming to a dead end first. And I'm actually seeing right now timelines coming to dead ends. The dead end. Yeah, okay. When light, it's acceptance, humility, relief, reverence for change. When dark, inertia, stuckness, tension, unconscious gripping. To go deeper, listen to Kenny Rogers' The Gambler or Donny Hathaway's Giving Up. So it could be about surrender, taking risks. Note that in most stories and movies, the moment the protagonist reaches the dead end, something riveting happens. You are the protagonist. Speaking about like telling these stories, oh my God. You are your own hero. Reflect on dead ends in your past that led to unimaginable wonders. The moment you accept the ending, a feeling of grace will arise. Doors begin to open, both inside you and in the world. And I'm hearing at large. At large. Something's at large. I'm wanted. A part of the self running rampant. At large. And they're showing me like wanted posters. Wanting to find that part of the self, but that part of the self is an outlaw hiding in the woods. It's shadow stuff. We've relegated some shadow collective stuff or personal things into those hidden, those dark, the underworld, the dark forest. We got to go in there and find it because there's a reward. There's a treasure in finding and connecting with that part of the self. Because the hero becomes the hero through this process of development, through the seeking. Okay. The quest. Yeah. Okay, guys, so that's part 1 of this reading. We will dive even deeper into part number 2 with more specifics to the eclipse energy and what this may hold for us individually and collectively, how to work with this energy, because it does feel a bit touch and go here, but it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. This is just part of the story. It's like that, you know, the climax of the story, or the end that leads to an entirely new book. I don't know. We're going to explore more. If you're along for this ride, buckle up. but we'll walk each other home this way. So we'll do it as a team. How are you guys feeling about this? What jumped out at you? What is coming to mind? I love hearing feedback from you guys. In fact, a lot of you guys teach me things in the comments. So it's not just me talking to you. I want to have a conversation here about these messages, these themes, these archetypes, and finding a method to the madness, because it does feel a little chaotic, but when we work together, we can piece it together and figure it out. And thank you for everyone who has commented and on the previous videos and brought a lot of awareness to different types of topics, or way these messages could resonate in different ways. Thank you again to Mache for donating this deck, and to others who have donated in other ways as well. I really appreciate it all. I love you guys, and we'll see you in the next reading. Don't forget to check out my other channel if you haven't already. It's Tarot and Beyond. It's linked in the description box. I love you guys. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.